Welcome to Let's Talk About It. Broadcasting live from North Nashville, Tennessee. North Nashville spans from Metro Center down to the border of Bicentennial Mall, including the neighborhoods of Bordeaux, Buena Vista, Parkwood Estates, Germantown, Haynes Manor, Jefferson Street, Fisk Park, Cumberland Gardens, Oak Valley, Enchanted Hill, and many others. It's perhaps best known for the 3 universities housed here, including Tennessee State University, Fisk University, and Meharry Medical College. North Nashville is also home to the Tennessee Titans practice facility. The Tennessee Titans will begin construction on an expansion project at St. Thomas Sports Park, which will almost double its current footprint in Nashville's Metro Center neighborhood. The plan includes 60,000 square feet in additions, including a new building situated along one of the practice fields, and major renovation of spaces within the existing 75,000 square foot building.
Now live from North Nashville, Dr. William Head. Let's talk about it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Let's Talk About It. Coming from beautiful, often neglected, always disrespected North Nashville, Tennessee, not to be confused with North Little Rock, Arkansas, which is a city unto itself. North Nashville is a metropolis within the metropolis of Metro Davidson County, populated primarily by people of color, people who are poor, people who are disadvantaged. I call it third world communities within the great U.S. of A. Are you tired of being tired? Is King Governor Bill bringing back the carpetbaggers to the state of Tennessee with the president of Hillsdale College, which is in way up north Michigan, to tell you how to teach your children to think? Has he decided that you're too ignorant to take care of your own and teach your own children how to think rather than what to think? Is that what King Bill is doing? He goes all the way to Michigan to get somebody to tell you that you are ignorant and dumb. The Yankees are coming. The Yankees are coming. And King Bill is leading them right up on your doorstep with your tax money. You pay taxes, he's sending them to Michigan so that the Michigan folks can make money off your ignorance. You're too dumb to educate your children. School teachers, vote that sucker out of office. That's how you handle that. Get rid of him. It's ridiculous that you vote, pay taxes in the state of Tennessee, and he's going all the way to Michigan to find somebody to tell you that you are dumb. You go to the dumbest schools in the country, and you're taught by the dumbest folks in the world how to teach, how to move. The South has produced some fairly decent thinkers over the last 150 years, black, white, and otherwise. So now Mr. Bill is saying, excuse me, that you're too dumb to teach your own children. What they're going to do, come south and save the state of Tennessee? The Yankees are coming. The Yankees are coming. Look out. Joy Behar on the regular morning TV show said that President Biden should send Moscow Mitch McConnell to Moscow in exchange for Brittany Griner. We would certainly be getting the best of that deal. Moscow Mitch is making so much money in eastern Kentucky with the Russians. It is a conflict of interest for him to be in Congress anyway. He is a Russian spy. He's not at all ashamed of the fact that he is making millions while the folks of Kentucky are struggling to make ends meet. InfoWars Alex Jones claims that he's being sued for his being sued for defamation is an attack on the First and Fifth Amendments of the Constitution of this country. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, but the First Amendment violations only occur when the government tries to shut you up. Ooh. I would say it's a confirmation of the Constitution that these people are able to sue you because you had the right to say and still have the right to say anything you want to say. However, because of the First Amendment, people have the right to sue you for saying stuff that is injurious to them. And undoubtedly, your overuse of or your overreach of the First Amendment has now got your butt in a sling as you now owe people tens of millions of dollars. Good for you. Good for you. You're a great patriot. You proved the First Amendment of the Constitution is stronger than you. Women's rights. Lady Ash told me the other day, you're the only man I've ever seen that worries so much about abortion rights. And I thought about what she said. I'm not really fighting for abortion rights because I don't think I know what that in turn incurs, rather. I have no idea what it takes to have an abortion. I don't know the level of angst that a woman goes through to have an abortion. I am concerned about the eradication of women's rights, period. If you watched last week's installment of Let's Talk About It, you heard Reverend Dr. Donna Whitney take on talk on the history of abortion, and in those comments, she really touched on a lot of things that touch me, and I have no idea what it does for a woman. If it touched me like that, ladies, I'm sure that you are at a real bad spot in your thinking of the current trend to be extreme in all of these things that we see that the U.S. Supreme Court seems to embrace very genuinely. Now I want to speak to you young ladies who are 18 to 24 years of age, who currently go to college on athletic scholarships because you were given opportunities in high school to participate in sports that prior to 1975 you couldn't even play because they were not sponsored in your schools. When the enforcement of Title IX became the actual enforcement of it became the day, then all of that changed. Prior to that, the number of young ladies who participated in athletics and sports was around 300,000. Now there are more than 30 million who participate every day in some sort of organized sport and activity. Let me tell you where these dissipations of your civil rights are going. You've lost your abortion rights. The Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, threw the first stone that Jesus told the men standing around the lady accused of having an affair with a man. He among you who is without sin cast the first stone. He didn't say anything about anybody. He just said he. Because in that day and time, the only people got a chance to throw stones at people were men. Now, Let me tell you where this is heading. The stone throwing started with the Supreme Court decision. They've already thrown the stone at you. It's time for you to start throwing them back at them. If you do not, all of the advancements that you have enjoyed through the 20th century will slowly erode. You will simply be marginalized and treated as property. The name of the game is vote. You've got to get out and vote. You've got to get the 18 to 23-year-olds to the polls, registered and ready to go. You have got to fight this through the right medium, which is the ballot box. I keep telling you, 55% of the voting electorate is female. Get out and exercise that 55%, or find yourself put in a very tight situation with your rights as a woman. All you men, people of color, you've got to get out and join them in the vote. You've got to. There's no other way around it. Last presidential election, I got out and handed out voter registration material in Kroger's parking lot on Clarksville Highway. I got some of the most curious looks, but I also had some people to say thank you. Somebody needs to do it. I'm telling you now, you need to get people registered. Of course, it's a little late for this election here in Nashville, but the November elections, the midterm elections, are probably going to be the most important elections in the last 75 years. If you don't get out and get something done, you will find yourself under the 8 ball, not behind it. Let me get off my soapbox. Today we have with us my good friend, who I've never met in person, but we talked on the phone. We talked on podcast in Michigan with a good friend of ours, the Reverend Davy Tucker. He is the pastor of Beech Creek Missionary Baptist Church and has been appointed recently as the executive director of the Metro Human Relations Commission. Good afternoon, Dave.
How you doing, Dr. Higg?
Hey, man, holding on to a greasy rope with knots in it. Tell us a little bit about Davy Tucker. I believe our audience would enjoy hearing some of your story.
Born and raised in North Nashville, Cheatham Place. Went to the Marine Corps for a while, came back, worked at the Sheriff's Department, left there, went into private prisoner transportation. From there, I went to seminary full time for almost a decade. And here I am. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not good at necessarily telling my story per se, because, it depends on who wants to hear it and how you tell it. So, but I like to be seen as someone that's concerned about North Nashville, but also about Nashville and even the state of Tennessee for that matter, and the quality of life of the folk who live here.
Well, having heard you speak on several different subjects, I'm almost certain that those words that you just gave us is an indication of your desire to see things move forward for everybody. You now work with the as the executive director of Metro Human Relations Commission. Tell us about the operations and the aims and objectives of the Human Relations Commission.
The Human Relations Commission is a result of the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. If you notice, there's also a Tennessee Human Rights Commission, and you have similar type organizations all over the country in most municipalities. The thrust of that was Title VI, that the enforcement arm that got watered down through the legislative process was that Kennedy says you cannot receive government funds and discriminate against people for race, ethnicity, or nationality. And so Nashville created the Human Relations Commission, which is a 17-member commission. Actually, it's the largest commission in Metro. It has 17 members, all appointed by the mayor and then affirmed by the council. They can serve up to 2 3-year terms. But the mission, as outlined in Metro Charter, is that it is to promote the general health, safety, and welfare of all Nashvillians. It has the ability to hold public hearings. It has the ability to subpoena. It has the ability to investigate. It has the ability to issue reports. It's been codified in the Metro Charter, but throughout its history, it's never been funded to really live fully into all that it could do.
In what you're saying is that you have a responsibility and no authority or funds to exercise the responsibilities that you have. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, I would not say authority, because the authority is codified in the law. It's the ability of having the bandwidth to actually execute. One of the good things is that the mayor appoints the commissioners. The commissioners hire the executive director. So the nature and the interests of the commissioners are a direct reflection of the work that the commission can do.
Okay. Now, what I'm hearing is that you have the ability to look into issues and subpoena people to indicate or give evidence of issues within a situation. Now, when you get through doing your adjudication of a problem, do you then have some level of authority to make recommendations to the mayor or to a particular, like the police department or anything like that?
Well, the way it works, it just depends. If it's just and I don't mean the word just in that, if it is a investigation involving some wrongdoing on behalf of a metro department that is not a Title VI issue, we can still do a public hearing, investigate it, and issue a report. But as it relates to Title VI complaints, the city could lose federal funding for not abiding by the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Okay. Well, that would be similar to what I was talking about a few moments ago with Title IX, because it has a similar function of leveling the playing field so that women receive an equitable share of federal funds for activities and programs that have any level of federal funding. When you find explain to all of us exactly what Title VI encompasses in your mind.
Well, Title VI is, again, the enforcement arm of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which basically says that no recipient or even sub-recipient of federal funds can participate in discrimination against anyone on the basis of color, ethnicity, or race. Now, it does not extend to sex and gender. That was not the scope of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But there are other titles, such as the way Title IX was used. You also have Title VII. You have Title VIII, that all have implications that are very, very similar in that regard. But for the Human Relations Commission, we also tasked with promoting and fostering an inclusive Nashville. And we do that through trainings. We do that through, we recently held 4 public hearings around reimagining public safety. We advocated for language access that was approved in this last budget, that will allow for most forms in Metro to be printed in the various languages that are needed. Language access is something that we don't work that hard on, which, again, it just creates another deterrent to folks in business as they engage the criminal justice system, even going to the library. So how do we make folk aware? How do we bring people together to our main goal, our first goal, is toward conciliation. But you cannot fix something until both parties agree that something has happened.
Go ahead.
But we have, again, we pushed for the forming of what has now become the Mobile Diversity Tour that I was explaining to you earlier, for the training of Metro police officers. It does not go as far as it needs to as it relates to the impact of race on policing in this country. But it is a start where we get a whole day with the recruits to spend with the LGBTQ community, with various immigrant communities. We explain Islam to them, and then it's the afternoon is spent around the African American community.
In a city that is diverse as this one, when I travel to South Nashville, out Nolensville Road, when I travel out Murfreesboro Road, down Thompson Lane, between those two thoroughfares, the vast difference, or the vast difference of communities becomes very apparent when you cross 440 going south on Nolensville Road. You immediately come into an area that is heavily Hispanic. And I find that as I watch television, the news in this city, never hear anything about the Hispanic community unless it's a murder. And some Hispanic youngster or some Hispanic person has committed a murder. There's a heavy African distinction in those areas. There is heavy Central America and South American tincture to what goes on in that part of the city, and nobody knows anything about it. Activities that the Hispanic community has never reaches this side of town. Am I missing something, or am I wrong in that?
Well, I think that you're right in the largest concentrations, but they are, and immigrants can be found all over Nashville.
Oh yeah.
But there are concentrations that appear to be south. Nashville also has the largest Kurdish community outside of Kurdistan. So, but they are all over Davidson County, and yes, they are. You see pockets in South Nashville, but there are also, if you remember, I don't know, 10 years ago, the proposed mosque to be built in Murfreesboro, and all the problems down there where they actually burned the building. There were protests because there's a large Muslim community in Murfreesboro. So you have a large Somali community here in Nashville. So I don't think we hear from them is because they're marginalized folk also.
Yeah.
And whatever we find in the black community, you're going to find the same thing typically in the immigrant community.
I would ask you a favor. If you find someone in the Hispanic community that is quote unquote a leader, I would certainly love to have an opportunity to sit in this same venue and have a conversation with them on Let's Talk About It.
Okay. Can I say one more thing to that?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
I found that even among blacks, we are not sensitive enough to the differences of ethnicities.
Very true.
When you say a Hispanic, a Guatemalan does not want a Mexican to speak for them.
No.
Nor vice versa.
Exactly.
So while their problems, again, are not too unsimilar to ours, the uniqueness of where they're from is often where they'll tell you that their disrespect starts.
I would agree. I taught some classes at Cumberland University in my hometown, and I had youngsters who were dreamers, youngsters who were on the cusp of being deported in my classes, and their perspectives were similar to ours, similar, not at all just like, but similar to the problems and issues that the African American community has. That's the reason I want to hear from them, because if we can find a point at which those come together, then we can work wonders in this community and beyond.
And that's going to take a collective effort, because we have to get past some of our biases in dealing with immigrant communities. We have more in common with them than we do the dominant culture in this country.
Absolutely.
And throughout history, I believe that there is a narrative that exists that seeks to keep us apart. That when you have black folks saying you all have to speak English if you come here, then that's a problem. Again, we become part of that caste system. We become part of that system that doesn't play out well for us. We bought into the whole idea, well, they come and take our jobs. I can remember when all groundskeepers on golf courses were black. Now they tend to be Hispanic.
And there are white guys doing jobs now. When I was growing up, they wouldn't even touch.
And so I think that our sensitivity to opening up to these other cultures and the political benefit that can be derived from these coalitions can serve both of our purposes. But Nashville has not done a great job of, first of all, even being attentive to the immigrant communities, but let alone blacks trying to find allies in the immigrant community.
Well, the old saying is, you cannot have friends if you're not friendly. And the point you made a moment ago is our tendency to snuggle up to the majority community in certain issues. I know I think maybe 2008, there was a referendum on English being the language of business in Nashville. And I had a show on WFSK on the Fisk campus, and I kept asking the question whether or not they're going to have to show their papers from their massa if they don't speak English. And caught some hell for that, but it was worth the hell that I caught because they defeated the measure. But unless we reach out and become friendly with the immigrant community, then we are just as standoffish and ignorant as the majority community.
Well, yeah, and we don't understand the feelingness of trying to do something on our own. It's not enough of us in Davidson County. If you got every black out to vote, it's not enough to elect to nothing except for what's remaining 2 or 3 council seats. And so when you have groups that focus totally on black this, black power, at the end of the day, you don't have enough of it if you could even put it all in the same barrel and shoot it.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that. I feel that the African American community in this city has a great deal of clout when there is a choice between a Republican and a Democrat, because usually that's going to split right down the middle in the majority community, and we make the difference on whichever side of the ledger we come down on. That's just my observation. It may not be, might not have empirical data that supports that, but I think that is the case. When you talk about 10 or 12% of the population being of color, we have a significant impact. The thing that I think that makes us even more impactful is creating alliances with the immigrant communities in the country, because like you said before, they have similar issues as we do, and in being so, I think there could be a real situation of finding a partner in crime, if you will.
Well, and I heard what you said, and my critique of that is that's the regular playbook of coming to us with our 10, 12% to take them over the top in their way.
Exactly.
But if you take our 10, 12%, the other 30% of immigrants that are here, and allies that we have in the dominant culture, you actually can move and actually run an initiative instead of being invited in. The mayors, to be mayor of Nashville does not require our vote. And the numbers bear that out.
Say that again. I think I might miss something there.
You can be elected to mayor in Nashville without the black vote.
Yep, you can. It depends
See,
on
and that's a problem.
depends on how divisive the election is, how far apart the two contestants are in their approach. Megan Barry, when she ran, did extremely well in the black community. I wish she could run again. I hope she does. The black community was very supportive of her, and I think gave her the strength to get over the hump, because she was the gentleman she was running against was so far removed from her level of thought or particular line of thinking that it was polarizing. So everybody went off in their own direction.
Now, I would tend to agree with you in that case.
Okay.
But see, again, she needed our little bit to win.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is when you talk about what coalitions of people that suddenly become a election determiner, like it's enough white folk in Nashville to determine an election. We already know that.
Yep.
There's not enough black folk in Nashville to determine an election. But if there was a coalition between blacks and immigrants, that's enough people of color to determine an election. I mean, to set the slate, to do the whole deal. We're always
I hear exactly what you're saying.
Asked to join on to somebody else's platform, which means my needs are not the primary needs. And even with Megan Barry on down, their political rhetoric on the campaign trail don't show up
When
and
they're
did
elected.
not show up during their tenure.
I agree. But we can only look at their past accomplishments or misdemeanors or felonies and try to make an informed decision. We know they're going to lie to us while they're running. That's just the nature of the beast. But the people that show up in North Nashville begging for votes 2 weeks before the election, I know not to ever vote for them. But anyway, as you look at the homeless situation in this city, when you talk about human rights, there seems to be a lot of rhetoric and not much action to me. I may not be as well informed as some. I see a lot of agencies in the city, non-profits who are feeding, caring for, clothing, and basically making the homeless a cause for their actions, but the city doesn't seem to give a care.
Well, and we juggled it, we fumbled it. It looks like it's going to get a restart here. But I think that there's some things that folk who are closer to that community will say that others who are part of the political apparatus would disagree with. But when you look at gentrification and the displacement that even showed up in this census, we're pushing minorities out of the county, totally out of the county, to places like Gallatin and other cities in Sumner County. And so if we're not trying to repair what has been neglected, then we're always going to be behind. This administration and this past budget put, I believe, $30 million into the Barnes Housing Fund to assist in building units, but it really needed $300 million with a commitment of $100 million a year for the next foreseeable whatever to catch up. You can't gentrify a neighborhood that hadn't been previously redlined. And so we are suffering in and not participating in the prosperity that's going on in this city. And so 30 million sounds like a lot of money, but that will not deal with how far we're behind. And everybody says affordable housing, and affordable housing is a misnomer in that it is a federal designated number based on the region that you live. That in Nashville, it's about 76, if not 80 now. So you qualify for affordable housing if you make $80,000 a year. We're not talking about that. We're actually, in all actuality, talking about workforce and low-income housing.
Yes.
So when folks are hearing, well, they're building affordable housing, no, that's not for the people that we're talking about. That's not for the people who are living under the bridge and in these camps who can now be charged with a felony for sleeping on public land. It's almost like a huge cliff and you rush water toward that cliff. Those closest to the end get pushed over the cliff first. So you have some that are farther back that may get pushed forward and toward the cliff, but they never go over the cliff. Right now, there are, as it relates to workforce and low-income housing, they're being swept over the cliff. Look at the development over in River Chase, which was I think they had maybe a couple hundred units over there that right in the urban core. Now they're coming back with some private development, and people are still trying to determine how many workforce and low-income units. Now they say they're going to have 200 out of that 1,100 as affordable housing. But see, that does not tell me clearly what is the low income and the workforce housing number. And so I think, again, for people who are impacting our awareness and participation in that, Nashville got $300 and something million in COVID funds that we could have did whatever we want to with it.
And what did we do with it?
Portion of it have done some real special projects. They did some to balance the budget. They gave raises. This past budget included a living wage for all Metro employees. So all across Metro, the bottom level jobs got to pay $18 an hour. Now, those are all wins, and those are all important. But we also know $18 an hour still won't let me live here.
No. Not at all.
So we should have been on a living wage a decade ago.
Longer than that ago.
Longer than that. But I'm saying we're having to play catch up now. But we can so rapidly and quickly come up with the money to build a new stadium. But we cannot come up rapidly and quickly to stop the eroding of the workforce and low-income housing stock, which, by the way, with all this CRT talk, certain words are loaded words. Intersectionality is a loaded word right now. But if you see what we've done by not taking care of the whole spectrum of citizens of Nashville by having safe, affordable and attainable housing, suddenly those individuals are not available to fill the jobs of this hospitality industry.
And so now you have the hospitality industry that is suffering because of lack of labor.
And if I'm living in Gallatin, I'm not getting ready to drive back up here and go back and forth to come down here and
For
work
$17 an hour.
and that's Metro guarantees the 18, but you've got folks that'll still pay you whatever you work for. So
that's true.
So you have restaurants still now that have not. You can go into places like we went to Ruth Chris a couple of weeks ago, and had to do this. You get the reservation, whatever. It's on a Friday evening, about a little bit before 8. Normally, it's almost packed. It's about half full, because they do not have the staff for a full house,
and they're losing money as a result. So the most telling thing is that they lose money because they can't serve the people that would make them money, and the people who could serve won't work for what they're paying, and they're too far away to come to work. So the right now labor has the upper hand. I don't know how long that'll last. But right now, labor is in great demand, and the resource is not anywhere near what is needed.
Well, and a lot of the jobs that everybody's celebrating that are coming here are not for a lot of the people who need access to those jobs.
That's right.
Most of those jobs have people transferring from other places in the country to come and fill them. So when you say you're going to bring in an Amazon, if we're not doing some type of economic development that involves some type of job readiness, then those jobs will not be for the people who live here. But I still believe, and I don't know, maybe that's just my hopefulness, that if the right group of people in the right public policy seats, that's why voting is so important.
Very important.
All politics are local. There's more that goes on in the Metro Council that has to do with the quality of life of Nashvillians than it is that goes on in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have people in the seats to make the policy, then those things never happen. And those people don't necessarily have to be black. They just have to be people who understand about what equality looks like. Equality is not everybody, or let me just say equity. I like that better. Equity is not everybody getting the same thing. Equity is really people getting what they need.
Well,
you may not need nothing. So if they passing out $100 bills, it ought to be a system where, okay, Dr. Head name ain't on that list. Dr. Head don't get $100 because he don't need 100, and somebody else may not need 100 but only get $33. So I'm saying until we look at how do we try to address and eradicate poverty, we're going to be dealing with these issues, and we come up with these band-aids of, well, let's get them educated, let's do this, let's do that. But if you look at wherever poverty is in the world, there's always a group of friends that show up with poverty, wherever it is. Violence, broken families, high incarceration rates, poor health outcomes, food threatened, and housing threatened. That accompanies poverty, and I don't care, you can go from Bordeaux to Bangladesh. The same things happen, but we never want to do what it takes to address poverty in a meaningful way.
Well, as a friend of mine, late friend of mine used to say, there's riches and poverty. Somebody gets rich because they're administering a federal program and they make more than the program spends on each individual. Your comment about housing a few moments ago were so very cogent, because most of the people that we're talking about now who cannot live in Nashville or in the county period are people who would be in those service positions that we talked about before. Then you said something about the affordable housing being for folks with incomes of $80,000. Why would they need a subsidy if they're making $80,000 a year?
Based on what it costs to live here.
Okay.
And they use the AMI, the adjusted medium income. And when you look at what it costs to live here for a family of 4, and when housing only supposed to be, I believe it's low 30 something percent of your take-home pay, many of us are paying 50 and 60% of our take-home pay just for housing, which means that there is scarcity and lack in other aspects of our life.
Completely.
Food.
The quality of life is affected, not just
and then
bits and pieces of life.
To that is the other phenomena of people talking about all the jobs that are available, but you can be poor and be presented with a job that it don't make sense for you to take.
This is true.
A lot of the jobs that are available are not 40-hour jobs, and they don't have decent benefits. You would be surprised at the number of people who are actually underinsured. One of the companies that has the janitorial contract with MMPS, the insurance that the bottom level insurance has a $7,500 deductible.
$7,500.
$7,500 deductible.
You're not covered. You're self-insured.
Well, but if I only make $30,000 a year, think about that when I have to spend. If I have an illness that requires that, that's going to take 25% of my salary. So all jobs are not good jobs, and so when people say folks don't want to work, I am grateful that I don't have to think about what it would look like because of my job situation of really hustling backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the fallacies in this thing that you just mentioned is, why would I go and work 30 hours a week, get paid $15 an hour, when I can stay at home and go to unemployment line and pick up twice as much every other week? Makes no sense at all.
When the governor done fixed you on that, you're not going to pick up twice no more now. The state fixed that. You do know that Tennessee has one of the lowest unemployment payout rates in the country. You got folks that don't get but $150 a week. Now, those other during COVID, where they added additional funds, those have all been withdrawn at this point. In an effort that folks felt would force people into these bad jobs. I mean, if you had jobs like the problems we had the last 3 or 4 months with this Red River trash pickup, they cannot keep people hired. A horrible job, horrible working conditions, horrible pay, and horrible benefits. Now, why would not, if the city is really interested in equity and being attentive to repairing some of the neglect, why would they not take that job back? You do know that used to be a Metro job.
Yes.
And when I was coming up, it was still a nasty job, but dude on the trash truck had benefits.
Yeah, he did.
He could take off sick. He always got a vacation every year. He got longevity, and he was contributing to a pension.
Which meant when he retired, he might have something coming in.
Same way with janitors. There are folk who put their children through college being a janitor. And they work 30, 35 years, and they retired with a pension with good Metro insurance. Now that they've farmed all that out, and what happened that to me ought to be criminal is when we privatized it, those private companies went to those same people who told that your Metro job is going away. So I was on a Metro trash truck Monday, but now if you're going to have a job, Red River's offering you a job at decrease this, decrease this, decrease this.
Yeah, I've had a run-in with Red River. They're not not one of your I've had a run-in with Red River.
Well, they've made some emergency contracts again with some other private vendors, but I am hopeful and still hopeful that Metro will get back in the trash business, because just because somebody can do it cheaper, the idea here is sharing this prosperity that is happening here. So by the city assuming this role back, it creates a full-time job with benefits.
For a citizen of the community.
Exactly.
The city of Chattanooga, probably the most progressive city in the state right now, brought Volkswagen to town. But one of the provisions of Volkswagen coming to town was they had to provide jobs for Chattanooga citizens, and that has worked well for Chattanooga. Dave, I'll ask you to give us one last thought that would cap off this show, because my man has given me the throat cutting motion, and it's time to go.
Well, I thank you for even inviting me. It's always good to talk to you, Dr. Head. My thought is, how do we get Nashvillians of all stripes who can imagine a different way and actually be a model, particularly to the South, about what good governance looks like, to where the intent is really made not to leave folk behind, but in this prosperity that we are experiencing here in Nashville, it further expands the wealth gap that has already existed even before this sudden run-up of property and everything. It can be changed. I believe it can be changed. I believe it can be fixed. I believe with the right individuals in these policy-making seats, Nashville is the economic hub for the entire state. No other city or region in the state generates more revenue for the state government than Nashville. These are facts.
Nashville is the most diverse city in the state. Nashville is the best educated city in the state from all
Can I give you
indications.
something to look out for, Dr. Head?
What's that?
The council sounded like they were not going to approve this RNC, the Republican National Convention, a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Well, it's coming back. because word from the state is, we will punish you if you go through with this. Now, punish is not going to affect me and you, but the big 100-acre East Bank development, which has to have certain state certifications, particularly as it relates to the waterway, as it relates to the bonds, as it relates to how that property will be ultimately zoned and used for whatever. So I won't be surprised if the council won't be able to hold their guns.
So we can't look down the barrel of that gun and say, do your damnedest.
Well, no, I think we can. I think we have to be able to stand and push against. I mean, this is not regular conservatism we're dealing with. What we're dealing with on the state level is this subversive white supremacist ideology that has tied Christianity up with Trump and take my country back. That is incendiary political rhetoric born in the pits of hell that ain't gonna work.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna have to cut you off right there and hope that the greed session will subside before too long. Gasoline is going down. They dropped the price a couple of pennies and tell you to be happy. As they said, as Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake.
Yeah.
So when the cake turns into people throwing rocks back at you, like that has happened to Justice Kavanaugh, don't be surprised. This country is made up of all sorts of folks who have developed a level of independence that you cannot take away. So we'll see how that works. Thank you for being with us, Reverend.
Appreciate you again, man. Take care. All
Ladies and gentlemen, as usual, we will close the show today as we always do. But I want you to remember that this tinge of violence that we've seen in the last 3 months is not over. The hate and distasteful discourse that will continue. I tell you now to get your children where you can put your hands on them anytime during the course of the day. If they go to school on the other side of town, find a safe place for them to go if something jumps off, so that you can go and find your children. I ain't talking to black folks. I ain't talking to white folks. I'm talking to all folks. Kin folks, skin folks, and those who are no folks. Protect your children. You don't want to be one of those persons that's interviewed about how you feel about the death of your child. How the hell you think I feel? Don't allow that to happen to you. Look out for your children. Find a safe place for them to go. I'll close, as I always do, with some words written by the late Reverend Dr. Dale P. Andrews, who died as the Dean of the School of Homiletics of the School of Divinity at Vanderbilt University. I have more questions than answers, more problems than solutions. From these gifts, I freely share. God bless and keep your children safe. Wear your mask. COVID hasn't left town yet. Peace. This has been Let's Talk About It. And I am William Head.